What's up, everyone? Welcome to Level 7. It is time for another episode of the Agents of Fandom podcast. I'm your host, TJ Zwarich, and fresh off our Deadpool and Wolverine spoiler-filled breakdown, theories, review, I kind of thought it would be a chill week. Of course, I knew SDCC San Diego Comic-Con was happening this week, but I didn't fully wrap my brain around how wild of a show we were going to have after San Diego Comic-Con, because my goodness, were there some crazy announcements. To help me break it down, I am joined by my co-host and good buddy, Adam Blevins. How you doing, Adam?
I'm doing great. It feels like this crazy summer that we've been talking about for so long is finally winding down. You know, The Boys just ended, as we were talking about before we went on the air, and House of the Dragon, one more episode left. The Acolyte's over. So it feels like we're at the bottom step. We've been walking down for a while. We're at the bottom step. Things are getting ready to cool off. But yeah, we got so much news this weekend that, especially Marvel in general is really shifting everything up for what we thought was going to be happening a year ago, or especially like a year and a half ago, is now just completely out the window. So I'm excited to talk about all these many changes and updates that we got for sure.
And before we even talk San Diego Comic-Con, I do want to get into a quick little Deadpool and Wolverine conversation, because I thought of something throughout the week just after we were thinking about our conversation. And so quick spoiler for Deadpool and Wolverine. If you haven't seen the movie yet, this won't take long. Just skip ahead like literally 2 minutes and we will already be done. So spoiler for Deadpool and Wolverine. I was thinking about how one of my biggest complaints was the motivations of the villains, and they just didn't really hit for me. And I want to kind of backpedal on that a little bit. I still feel that way for Cassandra Nova. I think the character was so cool, so menacing, so badass, but her third act, I'm going to turn the whole multiverse into the void. Ha ha ha. Just kind of, obviously she's not going to win because the whole multiverse isn't going to collapse. The reasoning, didn't feel great for me. But I thought about the paradox thing a little bit more. And my initial complaint was how, seriously, you're just bored at work, so you want to speed this up. That's all. That's your entire motivation. But in hindsight, I actually think that's a pretty great motivation, because it shows in today's political landscape how often a politician will cut a quick corner because it makes things a little bit easier for them, makes them an extra buck, saves them from time, and it impacts hundreds of thousands of people. Now in this, it was billions of people, but in real world, millions, hundreds of thousands of people so negatively, and they don't think twice because they just want to save some time at work, make a little extra money at work, so they'll cut a corner that negatively affects people. So on the surface, I didn't like it all that much, but as I thought about it more, I thought it was actually a cool reflection of society, because that is something that happens every day.
Actually, I really like that a lot too, and it's a little layered, and it makes even more sense when you think about who's playing this character, Matthew Macfadyen, who has spent so much time in Succession, which also is very much a show that examines like modern capitalism and the eat the rich, like in all of these. There's so many modern parallels in Succession as well that it wouldn't surprise me if a lot of what you're talking about came from Matthew Macfadyen himself, like working with Sean Levy and working with the writers, Rhett Reese and Paul Wernick and all them, like saying, hey, why don't we take this and shift it a little bit to exactly the stuff that you're talking about? Because he has so much experience operating in that. I mean, the Roy family in Succession is literally based off the Murdochs, who built like the Fox media empire. It's a 1-for-1, like the family and their rise to power and everything, and the cutthroat business model, all of that stuff. So yeah, I love that. I hadn't even really kind of thought about that myself either, but now that you said it, it definitely clicks and it registers and it makes sense. But like I said, it would not surprise me at all if some of that came from Matthew Macfadyen, because he is super talented. I think he's great in this movie, and he has more experience in that kind of realm, I think, than anybody else in this movie did.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And that was definitely, I haven't rewatched it yet, but as I was kind of thinking about the movie more, that popped into my head. I am looking forward to going to rewatch it. But let's talk about some San Diego Comic-Con. The internet was going wild. Socials were going wild. And make sure you're following the Agents of Fandom on socials at TikTok, at Agents of Fandom on TikTok and Twitter, Agents of Fandom everywhere else. Ryan Cortero, our social lead, always crushing it. And then YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, TikTok. We've been popping there lately because the whole Agents of Fandom team has been so incredible. Shout out to Damon, Comic Corner co-host, taking the lead on that one. Shout out to Zen. Shout out to Fat Thor. Shout out to Sydney. Shout out to Caroline. Shout out to Martha has been back making a video. The whole crew's popping right now. And so shout out to everybody who has been really doing great with those, because Agents of Fandom on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube, we're making some waves over there. And also make sure you're liking, subscribing the video. If you're watching us on YouTube, hit the notification bell and subscribe to the Agents of Fandom wherever you get your podcast, because it's not just us for anymore. We got the Comic Corner, we got the Council of Fire with Fat Thor and Listen 3000 talking some House of the Dragon. So we got a lot of good stuff going. Make sure you're checking it out. But let's talk about Marvel Studios at Hall H, San Diego Comic-Con, because this was maybe, they've had some big ones, but this was maybe their biggest one ever. The video, I mean, I'm going to save this for the end. We're going to save the big stuff for the end. Obviously, we all know about it, but we're going to save it for the end just for fun. And let's start out on the next Marvel movie on the slate, Captain America, Brave New World, the first movie of 2025 on the Marvel Studios slate. First of 3 right now, with Captain America, then Thunderbolts, then Fantastic Four. But
and Blade is still
Blade's
supposedly...
not happening next year. Blade's not happening next year. Blade's not happening next year. There's absolutely no way. But Captain America, Brave New World, they show some footage. I haven't seen this yet, but the way it was described is Harrison Ford's given a speech as Thunderbolt Ross, and he hulks out mid-speech as like, this isn't a secret. Like, I am Red Hulk. I am the president. Dude just like hulks out mid-speech. Giancarlo Esposito, it was rumored that he was going to be playing a character named G.W. Bridge, George Washington Bridge. But apparently, what the scoopers who scooped that, what they're saying is that that's what he was being called on set. That's what they thought, because that's what he was being referred to on set, was G.W. Bridge. Well, Marvel is getting better and better at keeping their secrets again, as we saw from Deadpool and Wolverine. Most of that stayed locked down. And it turns out Giancarlo Esposito is Sidewinder, the leader of the Serpent Society. So before they did Captain America Civil War, the Serpent Society was originally going to be who Captain America was fighting in the third one. Then they got the rights to Spidey. They decided to do Civil War. The rest is history. Things have never been set in stone. I know it feels right now like they're just have no idea what they're doing, and they're pivoting and they're panicking. But guess what? This has always been the case, and it's delivered some really incredible movies. So he is going to be Sidewinder, the leader of the Serpent Society. They confirm adamantium. They confirm Tiamat poking out of the ocean, and General Ross talks about how they were able to turn it into adamantium. And finally, I think it was Anthony Mackie let slip that Mark Ruffalo is going to be appearing in this movie. So Captain America, Brave New World, we got Red Hulk full of focus, Green Hulk probably popping in here. We got adamantium. We got the Serpent Society. What do you think about this movie? Because I feel like I know so much, and I also know nothing, because I have no idea what the plot itself is going to be.
So initially, I was curious when we learned about this movie, because, and we were like, Red Hulk was going to be a feature, and the leader were going to be like feature villains. Now, if I'm not mistaken, you can correct me on this, because I know you probably know more about it than me. The leader in particular is not, his gamma powers affected his brain, not like his strength. Yes. He's not like Correct. A super strong. Okay, that was my thought.
In theory, he's supposed to be as smart as Hulk is strong. Sorry.
Okay,
but maybe has a more limits to his than Hulk.
Okay, and then I was doing a little bit of research on this, because I actually wrote about this for Collider this morning, talking about Red Hulk in particular, where a lot of people feel like just base power levels, like if you strip them down to their core, like when they first transform, when Hulk and Red Hulk first transform, that Red Hulk is probably stronger initially, but obviously we all know that Bruce Banner, there's no limit to the Hulk's power because he just gets stronger as he gets angrier, and there's no limit to how angry he can get. So as every fight goes along, he will eventually be stronger than anybody because he will as angry as he gets. So but just in general, knowing that the Red Hulk was like base level more powerful than the Hulk, I was like, okay, so something's going to have to happen in this movie because I love Anthony Mackie. I love Sam Wilson, and I'm so excited to see him as Captain. He's not taking down the Red Hulk. There's no, even Steve Rock, like, I don't say that to say anything about like bad or like because he doesn't have the super soldier serum, because that ain't going to make a fucking super soldier serum's not going to help you against a Hulk. Like if Captain America would have had to fight the Hulk in like Avengers, like Thor, there was only one person on the entire ship that could stand against Hulk, and it was Thor, and Thor still got his ass kicked. The Hulk destroyed the entire ship. So I was like, that was one of my first thoughts is, okay, well, how are
call
we
down Captain Marvel and just be like, hey, can you help me out, please? Yeah.
But like that was one of my first thoughts is like, okay, how are we going to kind of balance this out? So when I first read that news, I'm sure Feige was probably in his office shaking his head like, damn it, Anthony, you weren't supposed to say anything about that.
It might not have been him. It might have been Samuel Stearns who did it. It might have been the guy who plays the leader. I can't remember. It might have been him who let it slip.
No, it was Mackie because he was like, because like I watched the video and I was writing about it. He was saying like, I've got the quote up right now. He was speaking at San Diego Comic. He said, events of Hulk in his film don't pertain to this movie at all. So when he shows up, his world, his universe, his story is completely separate from the way we utilize him in our story, which sounds exactly like he's saying, hey, Hulk is going to be here, but the stuff you've seen from him in the past is irrelevant, which makes me think that we're going to get raging, no longer smart Hulk. Like it's no secret that like I'm not as harsh on smart Hulk as a lot of people. Like general MCU fans, I think we all know they hate the smart. They don't like they feel like he's weak. They don't like this smart Hulk. So maybe Marvel is just going to be like, all right, you want raging Hulk, you want Incredible Hulk, Edward Norton, just beast with mindless beast that tears everything. We'll give that to you then. And we haven't really seen that from Mark Ruffalo in like 10 plus years. The only time he got to do that was in the Avengers. And even then, by the end of the movie, he was in full control. He pretty much got to do that one time. So like, I would love to get to see his version of just a completely freak out, raging, unleashed Hulk. And that kind of sounds to me like what we're getting, because it's like, hey, all this stuff you've seen from him in the past, just throw it out the window. But yeah, I know we've been talking about just the Hulk thing already for like 10 minutes, but I think the Giancarlo thing is cool. I'm so excited that we finally have him in the MCU. I don't personally learning that he was the leader of the Sidewinder, the leader of the Servant Society, didn't personally move the needle for me that much because I don't have that comics history. Like I wasn't like, oh no, like I wanted George Washington, or oh no, this is so much cooler just because I don't know anything about either of those characters. Like, I'm just happy that he's here. And that seems like much more of a maybe first and second act villain for him to face. Like I can see when Ross and Sam Wilson like first meet in the White House or wherever, that all of a sudden like he starts shooting up him and the Serpent Society, start shooting up the place and everything goes crazy. But then like by the end of the movie, it's a much bit like the Red Hulk is involved and the leaders involved. Like he seems to me, Giancarlo is like probably not killed, because I'd be surprised if you get Giancarlo Esposito and you kill him after 2 acts of a movie.
Especially because he said that he might be getting his own Disney Plus series.
Yeah, or he said he would be in a series. Like I think that was his exact. Like he was like, I'll be featured. It'll be like in a movie first and then a series. So that's kind of my hope, is that he gets bested but not killed. So maybe he's in prison or he just gets sent back to wherever he was, whatever. So I don't know. There's so much to be excited about with this movie, though. I will admit that I am, because I mean it's common knowledge now that they have had some screening, like early screenings for these movies, and they all tested horribly. That people really did not like them, and that's why there were so many reshoots and so I'm a little concerned about that. I personally like everything. I thought the trailer was great. I mean, sure, there were some wacky visuals, but we've got 8 months until the movie comes out. They've got plenty of time to polish that stuff up. So that, like, the unpolished visuals didn't bother me at all because there's plenty of time for them. It was the same thing with She-Hulk. The She-Hulk trailer dropped like 4 months before the show and everybody freaked out. And it was like, they've still got plenty of time to polish this up. And they did. I mean, granted, it didn't look perfect, but it looked much better than it did in the trailer. So we've got more than enough evidence that they can fix that kind of stuff up. And I think that's what they're going to do here. But it's just hard to not be excited when we got Anthony Mackie taking over as Captain America. We have Harrison Ford in the MCU as the Red Hulk. That's something that people have wanted forever. Even like all the way back to William Hurt's like early appearances, people have wanted the Red Hulk. And we're finally going to get it. We got Giancarlo Esposito in here. Like, I'm just there's and I'm like putting everything on a scale. There's way more that I'm excited about for this movie that I'm not excited about. So personally, I can't wait.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more on that one, and it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. Leader pulling some strings behind the scenes, and Sam and Torres. Is that what's his name? Is Joaquin Torres? Is actually
Joaquin Torres.
What's the character's name?
Danny Ramirez is his name. Danny Ramirez.
Yes, Danny. Thank you. See what they're getting up to and just having to deal with all the different problems that the leader throws their way, whether that be manipulating Sidewinder, whether that be manipulating the Red Hulk, etc. I'm excited to see how that plays out. The next one featured was Thunderbolts, and we get looks at a bunch of the characters expected to be there. Yelena Belova is apparently the star. Bucky Barnes, Sebastian Stan was asked why this movie works, and he just points at Florence Pugh and says it is her as Yelena Belova that makes this movie work. We get to see action sequences featuring basically all of them. Ghost apparently has an all-new suit and looks really cool. The reason Bucky Barnes was in a suit was because in the leaked photos of on set is because Wyatt Russell, who's playing John Walker, the U.S. agent, let it slip that Bucky Barnes is going to be a congressman in this movie. So that's why he's in a suit, is because we have Congressman Bucky Barnes. And then finally, there is a brief and quick shot of Val in this footage that they saw. Val Contessa de la Fontaine, Allegra Contessa de la Fontaine, whatever her full name is, played by Julia Louis-Dreyfus, appearing to be in what was once Avengers Tower. So did Val buy Avengers Tower? Is Val visiting whoever bought Avengers Tower? Seems like we are finally going to learn who bought Avengers Tower. And finally, there's no news as to what the asterisk at the end of Thunderbolts on the Thunderbolts title means, but Kevin Feige reiterates that it is not named after Thunderbolt Ross. We will find out in the movie what the asterisk is for. And the rumor has it is the reason for the asterisk is because this won't be the Thunderbolts. This will be an attempt at the Dark Avengers. What do you think?
There's a lot to me. It's a little annoying because I'm like, if you're making such a point to, and granted, I want to preface what I'm about to say with, I'm still very excited for this movie. That being annoyed with something does not negate or how I feel, which is still excited. But for him to be like, no, this has nothing to do with Thunderbolt, then I'm like, then give it a different fucking name. Like that. If he's not going to be here, he's not going to play any part of it. Like, the whole reason, if I'm not mistaken, that they got that name in the first place is because he was like a leader or a member of the team. So it's like, why are we going to do this now and name it after him? Because he's going to be answering these questions. And like, people are going to, no matter how many times he says, because nobody believes anything that Marvel actors or creatives or executives say anymore. Andrew Garfield saw to that. Daphne Keane has seen to that. Like, we can't trust what they say anymore because they have been conditioned to lie. And like, I get it. I would prefer them do that to keep the surprise. But people are still going to be asking Harrison Ford if he's in this movie up until opening weekend. When Shrinking Season 2 comes out on Apple TV later this year or early next year, people at the Apple TV press tour are going to be asking him if he's in Thunderbolts. Like, and it's so frustrating that if it really is, if he has
what is a Thunderbolt?
What is a thing? who? He's like, I'm a Hulk. I'm the president. What are you? He's like, oh, his name is he's just gonna be so cool. I love him so much. But still, it's just, I'm like, why are we, if he's so clearly not a part of it, why not just give it a different name? Because they've done that with plenty of things in the past. They've just made shit up or given things different names. Or if they're going to do Dark Avengers, and maybe it'll be like the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, where by the end of the movie, the title was Captain America and the Winter Soldier. Maybe at the end of the movie, the title card will say the Dark Avengers or something. And then like we will think of that movie as the Dark Avengers going forward, and not, it'll be like, hey, remember when we called that Thunderbolts for like 6 months and now it's the Dark Avengers? Maybe that's what it's going to be. But it is frustrating because it's like, I feel like there's going to also be a lot of general confusion there, or like confusion between general audiences, because people are like, oh, Thunderbolt Ross. And then it's like, oh, the Thunderbolts. Okay, so he's just going to be the leader of this, like the Red Hulk's going to be the leader. No, it's not. And he's not even, not only is he not a leader, he's not even on the team or in the movie at all. So it's like, well, wait, why is he? I don't know. Who knows? Guess we'll find out when it comes. This just seems like a lot of unnecessary confusion. I don't know if there was a first draft of him that was ever in this movie, or if anything changed. But, and like I said, I'm still very much excited for this movie. I love the Suicide Squad. I actually enjoy the first one that most people hate, like more than I think others. I love James Gunn's version of this. I love getting together the ragtag band of misfits who don't fit together. I mean, Guardians of the Galaxy are a little more heroic than like Thunderbolts and Suicide. But I love that team mentality, that like unlikely group, unlikely family that comes together. And I feel like we're going to get some of that here. So I'm excited for it, but it just does seem like maybe the bullets are for the however many bullets there are is how many times they're shooting themselves in the foot with this title. Maybe that's what the bullets are for, because it does seem like it's going to cause unnecessary confusion having it like this.
It seems, for some reason, I have no idea why, but it does seem like the confusion is purposeful. And maybe as we get deeper into the marketing for that one, that'll be kind of revealed why. They'll dive into that a little bit. But the last thing revealed from this movie is that the characters from Thunderbolt will appear in the next 2 Avengers movies, as will the Fantastic Four be featured in the next 2 Avengers movies. The Fantastic Four got a brand new title. It's no longer just Fantastic Four. It is the Fantastic Four First Steps as the title for this one. Michael Giacchino will be scoring the movie. There is, on just like as they're doing press for it, absolutely insane chemistry between Vanessa Kirby and Pedro Pascal. Like, they are ready to be Reed and Sue. They are starting the promotion as Reed and Sue early. The way she looks at him, it is just absolutely unbelievable. Like, Vanessa Kirby is making real life Pedro Pascal just fold on the carpets and things like that because of the way she is just absolutely eyeing him up. She's doing an incredible job with the press tour so far. I can't wait to see her as Sue Storm. There's early footage shown of Reed at the Future Foundation doing a Bill Nye the Science Guy style of TV show, basically for kids, teaching them science. And so that's a fun kind of take on Reed that I'm pretty excited for. And then in addition to that, as like peering into, I believe it's the Baxter building where they're working. This is from the footage. We get the eyes of Galactus. So Galactus will be appearing as, I believe, the main villain in this one. And we get the Fantastic Four in full force taking first steps. Could that be in reference to the first steps into the 616 universe? Could that be in reference to Franklin Richards, their son, Sue and Reed's son, his first steps as a baby? I feel like we didn't learn a whole lot new about Fantastic Four, except for maybe a villain going forward that could interact with them. But the vibes are immaculate. They had a flying car. The flying car, flying above people at SDCC. They're going to be pulling out all the stops for this one.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what you said. I think you hit the nail on the head that I don't think we learned a whole lot new to freak out about or anything, but everything that we saw just kind of reiterates everybody's excitement for this movie. And I personally am really amped to know that they're going to be in their own movie and they're going to be a big part of the next 2 Avengers movies, because that's what I was a bit concerned about. And I'm glad we got that for like other characters like the Thunderbolts and stuff too, because that's the reason we loved all the characters that we did in the Infinity Saga, is not because like they had a good movie. It's because we spent so much freaking time with them. They were in so many different movies. We got to see them interact with other characters. That's what so many people are missing. Like, I'm ready to see the Fantastic Four have their own movie. For me, when I first saw First Steps, my interpretation of that, and I think you're probably more accurate and have, like more knowledge about this. And my first interpretation was just, this First Steps it's their first steps into the MCU. Like, it's maybe that, because we know this movie is going to be a period piece. He already confirmed it's set in the 60s, but we also know that they are going to get back to the main timeline in current day and get involved with everybody else. We like that's just has to happen. They're going to be in these new movies. So maybe by the end of this, they somehow, it does seem a little reductive or repetitive for them to like end up. I was going to say, there's a possibility they could end up in the quantum realm and then all of a sudden but like we've already seen that before. And I feel like if they're talking about this around like the writer's room and or like around the table, they're like, we already did this exact same thing with Scott Lang in Quantumania or in like Endgame and Infinity War. Like, we stayed in the quantum realm, we woke up, 5 years later, 5 hours, 5 years. So for them, 20 hours or like come forward 50 years, it'd be like 2 days on there. So they could do that, but to me, I feel like they're going to stray away from that because they probably want to do something different. So my guess is by the end of this movie, whether it has something to do with the one big thing that we still haven't talked about, the one big person who I am almost certain will be teased in the post-credit scene of this movie, whether it's his doing, the guy who mastered time travel in Earth 616 before he passed away, I'm sure we'll have some understanding of it. This other version of his character, maybe it's his doing after they assumedly will defeat Galactus in this movie, because it seems like he is going to be a one and done type villain, unless that I would be surprised based on what we've learned now if Galactus is not a one and done type villain. But it does seem like by the end of this movie, or at least by the end of the post-credit scene, whether they're in the modern timeline or not, we will at least have to know how to get there. I don't think we can end this movie being like, wait, they're still just in the city, because that's just extra work that the Avengers movies have to do that I don't think they have time for, because there's a lot of characters and going to be a lot of stuff going on. Like the Infinity Saga had a long time to tease that Thanos was in like, I think 3, or at least like he was in Guardians, and then he was in 2 or 3 other credit scenes like the Dark World and the Avenger. Like, we knew about Thanos, as opposed to this next guy. It seems like by the time we get to this movie, this will be the first that we're seeing of him, unless it is in the Fantastic Four post-credit scene. So I'm super excited. I agree too, 100%. Their chemistry, Pedro and Vanessa's chemistry, is just absolutely off the charts. The two of them, incredibly hot people that were just steaming, like looked like they were about to set the stage on fire. So I can't wait. And both of them too are just so charming. Like, if you ever listen to interviews or anything they do, they're both just so charming, like such charming, delightful people. So can't wait to see them in these roles. I'm super excited for the movie, and it does feel like this is going to be the big, we got a big movie with Deadpool and Wolverine. Seems like the for to be another big one that plays directly into, like, similar to how Civil War and Thor, right? And like some of these movies played right into like the events of these movies played into like Infinity War. Like, we're going to get the Fantastic Four play right into Avengers Doomsday.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And they've had to do some big pivots here. And I think that's why there's been less connectivity than we would have hoped for through to this point. And Avengers 5 was originally supposed to be Avengers Kang Dynasty, with Jonathan Majors Kang the Conqueror as the main villain going forward of the Marvel Universe. And he is, of course, now gone. I think the reason why the pivot came from Avengers Kang Dynasty to the brand new, recently announced Avengers Doomsday coming in 2026, with Avengers Secret Wars coming in 2027, is because that I don't think the general public was that high on Kang to begin with. Starting with Quantumania, I think they maybe were in Loki, but after Quantumania, not so much, other than the fact that Jonathan Majors' acting as the character was so good. And so I think when you lose him because of his own actions, I think it did actually make more sense for them to do the pivot to a different story as opposed to the recast, because the general public didn't really like that story anyways. But I also think that's led to just more things being off than just the Avengers name change. Like, I have heard, I can't confirm this is true, this is just rumors that I've heard, but I've heard that the plot of the second Shang-Chi movie was essentially supposed to be those rings, the 10 rings, belonged to Kang. He hid them in a timeline when Wu took them, found them and took them. That's why when Wu was able to live so long, because they made him immortal. They have something to do with time. And Kang is going to be coming to fight Shang-Chi, and they were going to have Jonathan Majors do like a whole bunch of martial arts stuff in this movie, and they were going to fight. And it was going to be like some kind of tournament for the rings, that kind of thing. Like, apparently that was going to be the plot of Shang-Chi too. No idea if that's true. That's just what I've heard. And so,
well, it makes sense. Just quickly, I'll say it makes sense too, because Destin Daniel was already confirmed to come back and direct. Was also supposed to direct Kang Dynasty. So
exactly.
that makes a lot of sense. I like that. That makes a lot of sense for sure.
And we saw, like, in Quantumania and Loki, these various things where it's like the rings to make his time chair very much looked like the rings of the 10 rings kind of thing. So it does make sense that was the route they were going, and they just had to go, sorry, everybody liked Shang-Chi, but we're gonna have to wait because we got to rewrite the entire movie now. We got to come up with a new reason why he's here. That post-credit scene doesn't make a lot of sense anymore. The beacon was probably to Kang trying to come back and find them again. So they have to pivot, and the way they have pivoted to Avengers Doomsday is to bring back Robert Downey Jr. as as the former Iron Man, as Dr. Doom, the biggest villain in the Marvel Universe, the biggest villain in comics that they have to offer. Robert Downey Jr. is back. Now, they have already said this is not Tony Stark becoming Dr. Doom. This is Victor Von Doom, who he is playing. Tony Stark is back as Dr. Doom. What was, before we even like speculate what it means, and eventually you weren't watching the SDCC live stuff. So like, this is your favorite MCU character. You've credited him like this portrayal of Iron Man as to so much positivity in your life. What were your initial reaction to hearing that RDJ is back as a different character?
So, man, that's a loaded question. It was hard to not. There was an initial, as soon as I read it and saw the picture, saw the video of him taking the mask off on stage, there was a wave of excitement that washed over me. Like, oh my God, he's back. Like, because this is just, I know Deadpool jokes about being Marvel Jesus. Robert Downey Jr. is Marvel Jesus. Like, Doomsday is going to make more money than probably any movie in phase 4. And like, it'll probably open to even more than like Deadpool and No Way Home and what all these other movies that we've had, just because of him, like getting him. Now, a lot of that's going to depend on the marketing, if the movie actually looks good and what everything looks like. But like, his impact on this just really can't be understated. And like, this man single-handedly, I know he had a lot of help. You know, Chris Evans as Captain America too. As Captain America was influential, and Hemsworth as Thor. But like, Robert Downey Jr.'s portrayal of Iron Man in particular changed everything that we know now about modern cinema. Like, pushing the MCU forward and allowing it to accomplish the things that it did, like with Endgame grossing $1.2 billion on opening weekend. Something we will never see again, ever. Anything like that again. So it was like, oh my God, he's back. I'm going to go to the theater and hear that opening Marvel crawl, and I'm going to see Robert Downey Jr. in an Iron Man movie again. And then I started thinking about how I felt after Endgame. Like, I'm like making myself emotional talking about it, because that character and the arc that they gave him really does mean so much to me. It got me through some of the toughest times in my life when I was younger, like between Iron Man 2, The Avengers, and Iron Man 3. I had all those movies on DVD when I was growing up, and that was around the time I was like in middle school and early high school, when I had a lot of days where I really struggled to find a reason to keep going. And I would come home and just put those movies in my Xbox and just watch them like on repeat. Like those three movies in particular, Iron Man 2, The Avengers, and Iron Man 3. I've probably seen each of those movies over 200 times. Like, and I'm not even exaggerating, because I just watched them all because of him. I used to like draw art reactors, and I had like drawings of art reactors and Iron Man suits in my room hung up on the wall. Like, that was how important this character was to me growing up. It literally saved my life. And even by the time Endgame came out, I was 21 years old, 22 years old. And I had just graduated college. So I grew up with Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man. And I got to see that come to the most satisfying conclusion in comic book character history. Like, Iron Man and Logan are like up there. Those are the two that have the most complete, fulfilling, satisfying arcs that are also, they end in the same thing. They end in death. But for both of them, that death, it's different than other characters who get to ride off into the sunset, because especially for Robert Downey Jr., his whole thing in the beginning, like, what does Captain America say to him in the first Avengers movie? He's like, you're not the guy to lay down on the wire to make the sacrifice play to let the other guy crawl over you. That's not who you are. And that's exactly what he does in the end. So while I was excited initially, I started thinking about all these things like that I just talked about there. And I was like, this probably is the biggest gamble in movie history, because if they do this, because they're doing this. I mean, it's happened. It sounds like the deal has been inked, and they're moving forward with it. If they screw this up, if these movies don't land and it doesn't work for whatever reason, whether the movies just aren't good, whether they don't write him as a character the right way, or whether, as much as I love RDJ and I think he's a phenomenal actor, that's not even up for debate. He just won a fucking Oscar this year. Like, he is a phenomenal actor, but sometimes an actor is not cut out for a character. Like, sometimes there's just the fit isn't there. So if the fit isn't there, the writing's not good, the movie's not good, whatever the problem may be, if this doesn't land, it will wipe out and maybe not necessarily wipe out, but it will be an undeniable blemish and a stain on what is right now like a flawless record. Like, sure, you can be like something like Iron Man 2, not a great movie, like things like that. Like, yeah, that's fair, but his playing of the character is flawless through and through from Iron Man 1 until he, takes his last breath in Endgame. So I'm really fucking nervous, man. Like, I'm excited, and I'm gonna be there opening Thursday, if not hopefully before. By that point, that's several years in the future. So hopefully, premiere or early screenings, whatever. But like, if not, I will be there Thursday at 3:00 at my IMAX showing on opening weekend. And I can never be like one of those people that's like, if they screw this up, I'm not watching again, because I have invested way too much of my life into this. As long as they're going to make Marvel movies, I'm going to watch them. I just know myself well enough to know that. I have sunk too much time and personal investment into this universe to just give up on it. I'm never going to do that. But if they screw this up, they will lose a lot of goodwill from me. And it would just hurt me personally, because that character and that performance and that actor, just all of it across, means so much to me. And this is a really big risk. This is like, shout out to, former co-host Garrett, because I believe he described it as like, this is the Hail Mary of Hail Marys. This is like the biggest risk that you can take. Not, they're not casting a Romani actor. They're not doing it. Like, they're bringing back the biggest gem that they've ever had to play the biggest villain that they've I'm confused on how they're even going to make it work. From my understanding, so much of Doom is like, he can't, if I'm not mistaken, he really can't even like take his mask off. Like, so it seems like there's going to be
just scarred
parts
and burned. Yeah.
So it seems like parts of the character, like I read, I wish I had bookmarked it and I could read through. That would have been a great. I didn't even think about it. But I read through a whole thread of like things that they're going to have to change about Doom with Robert Downey Jr. playing the character. And while I'm still excited, like I just want us to get a good Doom, and I want Robert Downey Jr. to be good. And I'm worried that those things can't coexist, because like you can't do Doom and just have him have his mask off, just wear a green hood. That's not Dr. Doom. Like if he's just wearing a green hood the whole movie, but they're not going to cover Robert Downey Jr.'s face the entire movie. I tell you that right now. We all know that for a fact. They're not going to be like, oh yeah, he's under there. That's his voice, but we're just not going to show. No, his face is going to be a prominent part of the movie. Even when he was wearing an Iron Man suit, they had a fake faux camera inside his helmet, so you could always see what he was doing inside his helmet, because his face is the recognition. So I don't know, man. It's just, I'm excited, but I'm so fucking nervous. How do you feel about it? I've been blabbering now for like 10 minutes about this, but it's because I have so many mixed thoughts. So how do you feel about it?
So I'm very conflicted. I don't know that I agree 100% that from a story standpoint, this is an incredible risk in terms of, if you decide to take this big swing on Secret Wars and Doom and Doomsday, and then they don't work out very well from a story standpoint, like people don't like them, you basically have to restart now. You got to restart from scratch at this point. But which I think there'll be like another soft reboot after Secret Wars regardless. But from an in-universe standpoint, you're taking this big swing. I do think it's a risk if it doesn't work out. I think it is the least risky thing they could have done from a business standpoint. Like, I don't care how much they're paying. Yeah. I don't care how much they're paying Robert Downey Jr. and the Russos. They're not paying that because they love these guys. They're paying that because it's an investment, and these movies are now guaranteed to supersede well over $1 billion. And so like outside of the Twitter sphere, I've talked to just like my regular friends about this. Like I had like 8 people text me about it, asking if it's true. And just like the general people who aren't super into theorizing in the storylines and have never read a comic, but just like showing up to the movies, were very excited to hear about this, at least the ones that I talked to. So that part I found interesting. The part I struggle with the most is just because one of the things that makes Doom so cool is the depth of his character. What he's been through, how he became who he is, the confidence he has, the hatred he has for Reed Richards, the background to who he is. And this is a character where it's not just like changing the race of the character doesn't affect anything. Like it's not someone you can just easily race swap because their background doesn't mean anything. His Romani background is very important to his character. And so that would have been really cool if we could have gotten a proper Romani actor portraying this. And it's annoying. You see so many people on the internet being like, oh yeah, because there's so many great Romani actors out there. One, there are lots of great actors who could do it. But two, like one, you're just wrong, and there are. But two, they found a deaf indigenous person who was an amputee to play Alakwa Cox Echo, and she was perfect. They found just a human being who was absolutely perfect for that role. Not a ton of acting experience, but someone who was Echo. And so she embodied the role perfectly. Aman Vellani is not an actor. She didn't act. She just answered an open casting call for Kamala Khan and went, hey guys, I am Kamala Khan. And she's been one of the best castings since Robert Downey Jr. So I don't want to hear any of that. That does bother me that it's not that we didn't get a proper representation casting for that. From a viewing it as a multiversal story aspect, I think it makes sense and it's cool and it's fun and it gets me excited. But I am just kind of nervous. I think already, like after watching and doing like the recaps, the reviews for our website for the Sympathizer, where RDJ is playing 6 different characters and they're all different. That very much just like, I'm not worried about him in the role. I think he's going to crush the role. It's more about I would have preferred they went differently with the casting, so it could have been truer to the character, given us the proper representation. And not that you need more than 3 to 4 movies where you're referenced in 2 of them and heavily featured through the other 2 to be a big bad for a movie franchise. That's more than enough. It is. Like, it's more than enough. But to me, this basically says Doom is done after Secret Wars, because RDJ is not going to be doing more as Doom after Secret Wars. And so I would like, unless we're just done with this Fantastic Four after those Avengers movies too, I would like another Our Own Universe Doom where maybe they do cast that properly. I think that's kind of set up to fail from a storytelling standpoint, because how do you go, hey, this is the most badass Doom, and it's Robert Downey Jr., and they're taking over the whole multiverse. Now here's just our Earth Doom. He's very badass too. It just, but like, it's, I'm sure they could figure it out, but it definitely does give them a very tough start if they do try and redo that. So I have a lot of qualms, but it's undoubtedly exciting. We get RDJ back. He's going to be Dr. Doom. Oh my God, that's crazy. Like, if I'm being honest, I probably prefer this to like a lot of the fan casts that were like, give me Cillian Murphy, give me this person, because I would like, I think the RDJ multiversal Doom thing, I do think that's fun. I just would have preferred a Romani actor being cast, and so that they would have just went a different route with the character entirely. But I do think it opens up a ton of super cool possibilities where you have Loki playing a Beyonder figure and trying to set up a battle world to save the multiverse, and somehow RDJ's Doom steals Loki's godlike powers and becomes God Doom. And then he goes up against a Thanos to show us how badass this Doom really is. Thanos says, you can't beat me, I'm the Mad Titan Thanos. And then Doom goes just like he does in the comic book panel, sticks his hand into Thanos, rips out his spine, and says like, ooh, clearly you're not the match for me like you thought you were. And just drops his spine on the ground. That would be so fucking cool if we get to see something like that. That'd be incredible. And so I think there's a lot of exciting aspects of it. I think there are a lot of very disappointing aspects of it, but I am very excited to see how it plays out. The video reveal of RDJ on Instagram became one of their like top 10 or 15 most viewed Instagram reels in the first like 24 hours of it being posted. People are going to freak out about this. It's going to make a lot of money. I thought the Russo, like this would have been like, hey, let's bring back the Russos. And the Russos said, hey, let's bring back RDJ. But what it actually was, Kevin Feige was talking about, was they wanted RDJ for Doom. So they asked him to come back. And he said, I will only do it if the Russos are directing these movies. And so that's where the Russos coming back came in. And then this also wasn't like, as much as it kind of looks just like a pivot. What do we do? Robert Downey Jr., save us. Again, Kevin Feige, I think, has a different idea for Dr. Doom than what I would, clearly. But he saw an audition of Robert Downey Jr. for Dr. Doom in the first Fantastic Four movie. He thought Robert Downey Jr. should have been the Dr. Doom for that movie. And he said he's just had RDJ's Doom in his mind ever since. So it wasn't like a RDJ save us as much as like a, ooh, I've been wanting this my whole life, and now here's my opportunity from a Feige perspective, I guess. And so we'll see how it goes. They have very rarely let us down in the past. The only thing, I mean, I know different movies. A lot of people don't like Quantumania. A lot of people don't like the Marvels. A lot of people don't like Multiverse of Madness, Love and Thunder. I have qualms with a lot of those movies, other than the Marvels. It just should have been longer. Other than that, you were perfect. But they don't let us down very often. So I'm excited to see where this goes. The only time I think they've given us something genuinely bad was Secret Invasion. And while they have to do a hell of a lot better with a swing like this than genuinely bad, it has to be a home run. If it's not a home run, it's a failure. But I'm excited to see where it goes. We got RDJ back in the MCU. We got Captain America Brave New World, followed by Thunderbolts, followed by Fantastic Four. We don't know what's coming after that for sure. Blade's probably in there. Some Disney Plus shows are probably in there. hopefully a Shang-Chi too. But then we know that Avengers Doomsday followed by Avengers Secret Wars are coming. Make sure you're following us on YouTube. Make sure you're following us on socials. Check the website every single day, as Adam likes to say. You got any last thoughts before we get out of here?
Yeah, I do. One, you were talking about the Russo in particular. I wanted to know your thoughts on that. I mean, we kind of already knew that. We figured that was coming. You know, Feige kind of tried to backpedal on it before, but like at the Deadpool and Wolverine page, well, nothing's confirmed. And everybody was like, "You're just waiting for Hall H to like officially announce." Then we all know that. But I was surprised at the amount of people who were upset, and like I 100% get wanting to bring somebody new and, you know, give somebody else a spotlight. But to me, I mean, if you look at their Marvel resume with Winter Soldier, Civil War, Infinity War, and Endgame, in general, like general consensus, those are probably 4 of the best 10 Marvel movies on 95% of people's lists. So like, it's a no-brainer to me. Now it is, I believe it was Jamie Jurack who said, it's the safest play that they possibly could have made. And she's right. It is, because we pretty much know probably what kind of movie we're going to get from them. But I'm okay with that, because I think the movie that we're going to get is going to be a good movie. I think it may not be like, I saw a lot of people were like, oh, Sam Raimi was right there. And I'm like, I don't know if I want another Multiverse of Madness style Avengers movie that's like horror or like very stylized. Like, I just don't know if that works. So what did you think about like them being officially, the Russo bros being officially confirmed? Because like, to me, I was fired up about it because I've done a great job in the past, but was also like blown away. I get it, but I was blown away at the amount of people who were like, oh my God, Marvel's fucked up again. I'm like, have they though?
I think, yeah, from the general public perspective, I think it always comes down to like, what have you done for me lately? And they've basically just struggled since the MCU, but their track record in the MCU was flawless. There's no doubt about that. Pardon me. I definitely wanted someone new, basically just for the purpose of someone new and getting different voices in there, as opposed to a lot of trolls on social media have been really annoying, but I've personally just really loved the directions they've been taking of like women directed film, women star film, people of color starring in these films, people of color behind the cameras, on the scripts, things like that. So I would have loved to see like a Ryan Coogler or a Daniel Destin Cretton, who have also succeeded wonderfully when they've taken shots in the MCU, or something crazy like Everything Everywhere All at Once was so great. Let's look at the Daniels, something like that. Let's look at Phil Lord and Chris Miller from Spider-Verse, because they did such a great thing. It would have been cool to, you know, I mean, I think they actually have Sony exclusive contracts, so it couldn't have been them, but you know what I mean? Just like somebody new-ish that we've seen succeed, give them the ultimate shot kind of thing. But from a storytelling perspective and in-movie perspective, I'm not worried about the movie because it's them. Like, I think it's in wonderful hands. I just would have liked to see some fresh blood.
That's fair. Yeah, I can agree with that too. And I would have loved the, you know, I'm sad that Destin Daniel Cretton's not going to get the chance, because like I think he would have done a great job. And I love the Coogler shout too. I think he would have done a great job. And he's, you know, both Black Panther movies have been pretty, even though they weren't like team up movies, they were pretty big in scale. So I think he would have done a good job, especially, you know, Wakanda Forever there at the end, really big. All the people of Atlantis and versus the people of Wakanda. That was a big scale fight, you know, and just movie in general. So I think he would have done a really good job. But yeah, I 100% agree that it's a safe play. But so often I will say I see so many people are just like, oh, they should have went and got blank. Oh, they should have just went and got blank. And I'm like, I don't think, and I'm not saying this to you because I don't think anybody that you named was out of the realm, but I saw somebody who was like, Spielberg would have been great. And I'm like, what does Marvel have to offer Steve? Like, he could not be less interested in doing something. Like, there's a lot of direct, like, people want, like I've seen people like they're like, bring Christopher Nolan back to come. And I'm like, Christopher Nolan doesn't want to direct Avengers Doomsday like that. Like, some people I feel like just don't think when they start throwing out some of these directors,
Christopher Nolan probably would have also casted Robert Downey Jr. or Cillian Murphy as Doom, though.
one of the it would have been one of those. I feel like for him, for sure, it would have almost certainly been Cillian Murphy and bring back Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man, like in some capacity. But I would have loved to have seen. I still, my dream is for Chloé Zhao to get to do the 5th Thor movie, to just let's take Taika Waititi out. He's done it, but like let's give like a full on like Thor versus Hercules. Give Thor that Logan type send off, like a very serious movie that like sees him go on this odyssey, like 2-hour and 40-minute odyssey across like chasing Hercules and doing all these kinds of like
I think it needs to end with him being like, and this is just us going totally off the rails, but it's fun. This is what the podcast is for. I think a next Thor movie needs to have that kind of send off, but not have him die. Basically, just have him end with like a big beard, helmet, huge muscles. He is a King Thor now. He is residing over some kind of domain. He's built a new Asgard where people can come to live, so that if you ever need to bring in like the heaviest hitter, you can give Chris a call, and he's not available. You know, he's the king of Asgard now. He's not worried about Earth anymore. He's moved on from Earth. So it's not like every day, where is Thor? But if you ever really need the heaviest of hitters, you can bring him in and just have him be like an all-powerful Odin figure at this point.
Yeah, I would love that. And I think that's such a great idea too, especially just bring him in for the Avengers, because like he's been worried about Earth enough too now that it's like he doesn't need to be helping Shield stop like that. That's out of his, you know, he's overqualified for that now. Let's be honest. But like, you know, I am admittedly not the biggest fan of Eternals, not because I think, and none of that is the fault of Chloé Zhao to me. I just think it's a little too packed. I think there's too many characters. Like I still enjoyed watching the movie, and visually it's stunning, beautiful movie. It's very stylized too. It's something unlike the MCU's ever done. I do get a little annoyed sometimes. I'm like, people weren't ready for you because, like, talking about Eternal, they're like, they hated you because you were different. And I'm like, well, like, no, there's a lot of us that enjoyed the different aspects of Eternals, but we just didn't like it because they didn't have enough time to really focus in on the characters that we want. Like every, you know, version of the characters was spread so thin because there was 12 of them to talk about, however many there 8 or whatever there was to talk about. But like, if you give Chloé Zhao this Thor 5 and let her treat it like this giant space odyssey where Thor gets to go travel throughout the cosmos, helping different planets, have somebody go along with him, give him one final interaction with Loki. Like, I feel like she could absolutely knock that out. And maybe she's an Academy Award winning director. So maybe she's like, no, I did that and everybody hated me and said my movie sucked. Fuck y'all. I'm not coming back. And if that's what she says, I totally get it. But I think if they want to do, and they may just disregard Thor: Love and Thunder, and we may never get to see Brett Goldstein as Hercules again. That may be one of those post-credit scenes that just never pans out. But if they're going to bring him back,
4 and 5,
if they're going to bring him back and he's going to be a Thor character, I feel like that's as good of an idea as I can come up with, like a Thor and Hercules movie, this big, like a send-off, kind of like you said, maybe not necessarily with him ending up dying, but it closes the chapter on his book until he's needed by the larger team, or closes the book on Thor in general in the MCU.
And you drop Hercules into the Avengers. You make Hercules an Avengers, so you still have your silly god as part of the team.
Exactly. It just seems like it works so well. Like all the best parts about Eternals would slot right into a Thor movie perfectly. Like, because I think the action in particular, she did a great job, like showing the distinction in people's powers. All the action scenes in that movie are great. Like, that's as good of an idea as I can come up with for a 5th, because I love Thor Ragnarok. I'm not the biggest, like many people. I enjoyed Thor: Love and Thunder my first time watching it. Not the biggest fan anytime I've tried to watch it since. It's a little too silly for me. The jokes, I think, landed when I wasn't expecting any of them a little more than now that I know they're coming. I'm like, oh, that's not funny now that I've heard it 4 times. I just I'm cringing at the scene that I want to get out of and move on to the next one. And I think Taika, as much as I like him and as good of a director as I think he is, I think it was like they made Thor Ragnarok, but just with their brains on acid. Like they just made it on steroids and way too silly. They went way over the top and all that kind of stuff. So I'm hoping that we get.
You had this cool ass villain that you just didn't utilize.
I know Gore taking Gore and doing what they did with him. Like that's like that meme that's like, look how they just massacred my boy. That you get Christian Bale to play Gore the God Butcher, and it ends up being universally one of the worst MCU. You know how bad you have to fuck that up?
And he was so cool in it. He
was great. It was no fault of his. Like it seems like they cut out 20 minutes. I love how we're just ranting about like random MCU stuff.
About how much better Thor: Love and Thunder and even the Marvels would have been if you just add 20 minutes to that movie. But speaking of the Marvels, I think Nia DaCosta would actually also do a really good job of a fifth Thor movie. But it's like you said, we got to get out of here. Make sure you're following the Agents of Fandom on socials at Agents Fandom on TikTok and Twitter, Agents of Fandom everywhere else. And make sure you like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. If you're watching us on YouTube, subscribe to the Agents of Fandom wherever you get your podcasts. We will be back next week with some more Comic Corner with Damon AF and Fat Thor, more Council of Fire with Fat Thor and Listen 3000, and not a lot of content for us to cover here from the Agents of Fandom podcast front going forward here for the next couple of weeks. But, we'll find some fun things to do. Maybe it's time to get back into draft season, play some games, do some trivia, things like that. You have any ideas? Let us know on socials. Thank you so much for tuning in, everyone. We will see you next week. Peace.